to being a consultant. And I got this reputation because I'm such a kind of go-getter and I like to deal with difficult problems of kind of dealing with the trash. So that's where it started with the Trash Panda. In case you don't know what a Trash Panda is, it's kind of a different name for a raccoon. And the joke with it is, and the reason why I'm called Mr. Trash is I just like to deal with the trash. I like to deal with those problems, kind of find solutions to them, and also um, just make customers happy.
All right, very interesting. I didn't know that. What kind of things do you write about in your newsletter?
So the newsletter Trash Panda Thoughts is it's kind of two different things. It's a way for me to talk about my story. I've gone through a lot of experiences over the past 5 or so years that I feel like are really relevant, especially with my journey with ADHD. I was diagnosed as a kid, and recently I've been dealing with it as an adult. So I talk about that element, and I also talk about how I've dealt with kind of specific issues. Like this week, I talked about outsourcing my life, and I was talking about how my ADHD makes it so I do not like focusing on certain things and getting them done. And it was kind of like a story about like why I deal with that and how other people deal with that and how ADHD makes you like this, and also some lessons that people can take and learn and kind of implement in their own life. So it's kind of twofold right now.
Okay, cool. How do you promote your newsletter so far?
So right now I've seen some success with promoting on Twitter uh, through my own personal hashtag, and I've also seen success with LinkedIn. It was really surprising. I did a issue about interest, specifically my interest in aviation, and I must have used some tags that were correct, but the amount of impressions and people that were outside my network that were signing up, it was still like small, but it was much more significant in that week than it has been before. So those are the two main avenues. I do a little bit of Facebook and stuff like that, but I'm kind of working on that promotion right now, and I've seen a lot of success with LinkedIn. There's a lot of talk about ADHD on LinkedIn, especially how it applies to the workplace. So I usually frame my posts to be focused on here's my issue and here's how it ties in the workplace. And then I do the same thing with Twitter.
Very cool. So you use Twitter and Facebook to promote your newsletter. Um, how do you what services do you use to create the newsletter? Like writing the newsletter, sending it out.
So right now I use Substack. I recommend that kind of as a easy to use kind of like it's an easy tool that you can use. And I say that because if you look at the landscape of email newsletters, you can use like MailChimp. Um, there's a lot of tools out there, but Substack kind of stuck with me because it was very easy to just sign up, get in there, create the newsletter, and then blast it out. Eventually, I'll move to another platform, but it works great right now.
Very cool. Uh, how would you say that a newsletter has helped you so far? Like, have you grown your network or any other things?
So the newsletter is not the only thing I'm working on. I'm working on my own podcast too, kind of a platform for people to talk about their journey with ADHD, kind of lessons behind that. And they're tied together, but it's also spearheaded a business that's not even related. So it's helped me grow kind of a way of creating content that's valuable and also tying it into other projects that I'm working on right now.
Okay, cool. Um, what advice would you give someone who uh, asks you how to start a newsletter, or what should they do to start a newsletter?
I think the biggest thing I've seen is that I've doubted what I'm writing about. And I would say if you have a topic that comes to your head, like whether it's just at a random moment or something like that, write it down, save it for later, make some detailed notes about it, kind of flesh it out. see where you go with it. I've found that a lot of those topics that I write down and kind of document, I don't doubt, and it comes from my heart and my experiences. So for me, I think everybody has a story they could talk about, and I think once you find where that kind of niche is and what you can like, you know, provide of value, I think that's the biggest thing that I can give in terms of advice.
Very cool. So you mentioned a podcast earlier. What would your podcast look like? Would you be doing interviews? Would it be solo? Would it be a roundtable?
So it would be interviews. I think I kind of like, this is gonna sound weird, but I like Joe Rogan's kind of approach where it's very casual and laid back and more like a conversation. And I would take that approach with interviewing people that have ADHD. You know, I want to learn about them. I want to learn about what they've struggled with, what they're working on, what's kind of ticking in their brain. And there's really not anything like that out there. There's a couple of podcasts on ADHD, but they're kind of more formalized. I'm a very relaxed, informal person, so I kind of want to take that approach with interviewing people where it's laid back, it's loose, it's honest also.
Okay. Very cool. So you mentioned you have other plans for Trash Panda. Can you go into detail about any of them?
Yes, so right now I have a business called Rovigi Solutions, which I originally launched as a Salesforce consultancy, and I'm working on using that brand name again potentially for a productized service where we're writing standard operating procedures or SOPs for remote SaaS companies. Uh, that's one of my projects. I'm also looking at opening another business called Trash Panda Partners. That's kind of the investing arm of what I do, doing stock investing, real estate investing. Also, kind of there's a crazy project I have. There's two. One is I would love to run a farm, a sustainable farm of my own, and I would also like to buy a old 747 and convert it to classrooms and fly makers, entrepreneurs, kind of people that can teach kids and adults in second and third world countries essential skills for the future economy.
Very cool. So I wanted to talk about Salesforce a bit. How exactly do you, or what do you do for your Salesforce consulting? Can you go into detail about that?
Absolutely. So, in case anybody doesn't know, Salesforce is, I believe, the largest CRM, customer relationship management platform in the world. Um, Very well known. It's an awesome product. And what I do, I'm a solutions architect, so I work with clients on a daily basis to either implement Salesforce if they just bought it, either migrating them from an old database or just a new one, kind of rolling them out, setting them up with best practices. Or what I do is I consult with people that already have Salesforce and I kind of act as their administrator. So I'm kind of in there directing strategy a little bit, kind of working with somebody that helps me on that, and also working with other consultants to add things in their system, clean up their system, train them on it. So it's a great job. It falls into the category of sales operations, which is the function in a company where you're kind of managing the CRM, whether it's Dynamics, Salesforce, HubSpot, etc. You're working with sales teams that get deals through the system, kind of make sure data is tracked in there properly, reporting needs are met for the wider business. Also, a lot of training. That's my favorite part, honestly, is I love training people. I love talking with people, kind of training them, kind of running them through a scenario. That's what, I like to do on a daily basis.
So how do you train someone then? Like, do you just walk them through, or do you do like a course or something like that?
I've thought about actually making a sales operations course, and I kind of tabled that for now. I like to take the approach of it's kind of hands on. Um, I firmly believe that when you train your sales users and you empower them and you give them at least a little bit of trust to do right. You don't need to build a system that is so complex that it like forces them to fill in certain fields or like has a ton of fields and a lot of steps and stuff. And that's in the actual system and the process. So I like to take that hands-on approach of just being a teacher, being a mentor, being that approachable person in sales operations that is more than happy to like help a sales rep out, kind of reaffirm expectations and things like that. So for me, it's a two-way street. I don't know how to sell. I really, honestly, it's not one of my skills. I hate it, even though it's a lot of relationship building. But I'm great at like showing people how to use the system, getting their feedback, and also kind of, guiding them through things to make sure they're following expectations.
Very cool. All right. Final question. So Ross, you and I met on MakerLog, which is a very small community of people building products. I wanted to get your opinion on this. Do you see the internet as getting smaller or bigger? Like in terms of websites or people going to smaller websites versus big ones?
I had this philosophy, and it kind of ties into my startup philosophy. Um, I believe that everything's getting smaller. I really think that the approach with bootstrapping and making is going to take off, especially with these kind of, this downturn that's happening right now. So I believe that we're going to see a lot of startups and kind of more the internet shrinking in a way and becoming a little bit more personal. We've given up a lot of freedom with the internet in terms of our data to large companies, in terms of like what we use on a daily basis. And I really believe that we're going to see everything get smaller, where a lot of these indie makers or entrepreneurs are going to have products that are built from the ground up with less VC money, less debt, less overhead. They're lean startups. And I feel like it's going to be like base camps of the world, because that's how base camp started. They were very lean. They were kind of a bootstrappy startup, and that's how I feel about the future. Is like this downturn is the start of that new future, because we're getting away from the old VCs with their burn rates and everything like that, and kind of like a lot of overhead and a lot of people. We want to be lean. We want to be agile. We also just want to be more personable. So
Very cool. Uh, that's great. Where can people find you online?
So my Twitter handle is Mr. Trash 757, or you could find me at trashpandathoughts.substack.com.
All right. Uh, Thanks for being on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I enjoyed being on here.
All right, great. Um, if you would like to be a guest on the podcast or host your own podcast episode, come join the Open Podcast Telegram chat and find me on Telegram and we'll talk about it. Okay. Thanks for listening. Have a nice day. Bye. All right,
It's
dude.
kind of bad when you forget your Twitter handle.
Dude, I forgot what podcast I was recording. That's why I got
Dude,
so awkward at the beginning.
it's okay. It's like me with Notion. I'm like, what notification like is this Notion notification for? And it's like I got one day I got 10 in my own, because my girlfriend helps me ghostwrite the podcast, the newsletter. Like, she's my editor because I'm a
Mm.
crazy dude with thoughts that don't make sense.